When the sound of your voice gets lost in all of the noise, just remember you're not on your own. I'm
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Howie Marlin here. It's November 21st, the day before Thanksgiving. On another episode of Addiction, You Got a Minute? And I'm joined here with my partner in crime, Patty Page. Patty Pike. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Howie. Good to see you this morning. Good to hear you.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be seen. We are joined today with one of the Marvel Comics characters. Oh, no. We're joined today with Arthur Westinghouse. Say, hey, Arthur.
Hey, Howie. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Arthur.
And my first ever impression, according to my family, that I ever did was the Hulk. At 2 years old.
All right.
It sounds like a lot of fun to me. Okay, that's quite the note to start off on. I'm going to begin the conversation.
Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno. Sorry.
Don't take you for Lou Ferrigno. I want to start by saying that I'm relieved to tell you both that I'm actually able to relax during the podcast. Right now, it's, what time is it here in the East Coast? It's almost noon, and I had almost been forced to do an expedited intervention this afternoon. I had been working all week with a parent of a young man in need, and she wasn't following most of my recommendations. She was pushing things along and being in quite a panic, and I finally I got her to take a breath and to be able to take a big step back to do the preparation that's needed. I had already called the facility. For me, I arranged the transportation, and the leverage for us is, in this particular young man, is either you come aboard or probation's going to come down on you and take you off to jail. So I have a friend who's a cop who's going to park outside the house and just flash the lights. And I go, well, which car do you want to get in? I mean, really, that's the kind of...
Oh, okay. That's good. That's good, Holly. I like it. You got to do what you got to do sometimes, right?
I'm learning. I'm learning.
Right.
This is my fifth one, and I can tell you that I've only been able to do one intervention as designed.
Okay.
With all the letters in advance, the pre-meetings, the identified leaders, and calling out the people who could undermine. And other than that, the other ones, there was too many power plays and people wanting to charge in, and paranoid mothers and people getting on the phone to people who are going to ruin it. And yeah. Arthur, how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing interventions for the last 6 years.
How'd you get into it?
I ran into a friend downtown Chicago who'd been hounding me to do interventions for like 2 years, and he just happened to catch me unemployed, and I said, all right, I'll give it a go. And 350 interventions later, the sad irony is that same guy just was found dead of an overdose in Cincinnati about a couple months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, these key players in your life that just a lot of key players in my life in particular. There's been a lot of tragedy. It's like, I'm still here. Why the hell am I still here?
Yeah.
I'm no better than they were.
Well, but for the grace of God go I is my mantra, and I'm amazed that I am still here. But you kind of slipped in an interesting factoid. How many interventions have you done?
Around 350.
Around 350. Yeah, no wonder you're a musician. You're in Tennessee, right? You're in Nashville, right?
In Nashville, yeah.
And who was that lovely woman we heard with the intro there?
Oh, that's my beautiful wife, Diane. Actually, tomorrow's her birthday. Her birthday's on Thanksgiving this year.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, very nice.
She has the same birthday as my little brother. And this morning, so check this out. This morning, being in Nashville, I looked in my email and I saw an email from the Ryman, and I looked at their list of concerts, and I saw Michael McDonald, 11/21. My wife, Diane, loves Michael McDonald.
Ooh.
That's like one of her childhood heroes. So I immediately bought the tickets, and she cried when I told her that. That's what I got. So.
Oh, that's so nice, Arthur.
So lucky me, I made the right choice.
Yeah, that's really good.
And
there's the gift.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she had to go take the dogs for a walk, so we didn't have the dogs barking. Otherwise, she would be on the show, and hopefully. Oh, by the way, I will play the song in its entirety at the end of the show on the way out. But I just want to say that I started to cry when I heard that song for the first time. Her voice is spectacular. So a tip of the hat to you guys for that.
Thanks, Howie.
Well, you're very welcome. So this is interesting. You started doing interventions, you mentioned in June of 2012. What were the big lessons learned so far?
Up to now,
yeah.
Up to now, you learn when to throw the book out the window. You learn when to throw the book out the window. That every single one. One thing I'm clear is that there's always one thing, usually on a subtle level now, that has never happened on any of the other interventions that I've done. That's going to happen. There's always one thing that hasn't ever happened before.
That's quite a statement. You said, like 350 interventions or something like that. Patty, what's been your experience?
Oh, in terms of
lessons learned.
Lessons learned. Oh boy, wow. I would like to, sometimes I really, because I'm such an analytical kind of person, and also I'm a very kind of family-centered, client-centered person. And, so I try, and it's really important for me to have a lot of structure, obviously, when I go into an intervention, and try and follow the guidelines. However, you really don't know what you're going to be dealing with sometimes. I mean, I've actually walked in to an intervention thinking there was going to be 5 people, and there's been 14. And, and all of them Christian. And, and having to sort of really mold myself into embracing, the folks that I'm dealing with. Sometimes you just got to put on a lot of different hats. And, I think that the key piece for me is that I am a bit of a structured kind of human being, just because I think it is important to have structure, to know, to present that, especially when you're dealing with families that are very dysfunctional and, that want to control everything. But on the other side of it is that, you know, if you've got someone that's really in a really desperate situation, and it means that you've got to change gears, I will change gears. And I have had private detectives, I've had police officers, I've had sheriffs. I mean, there's a lot of different intervention cases that I've definitely had to change gears. So yep, throw the book out. I agree.
Well, in my short career, it's been amazing. As you know, I Jeff J is my supervisor, and I call him and I go, "Gee, oh my God!" And he goes, "Yeah, get used to it. Get used to it." And you know, his constant reminder, you know, the intro, Arthur, one of the third intervention I did, I had met with this mother who was very conservative and very prim and proper, and the girlfriend who told me of this gentleman in need of help gave me no indication that when the team assembled, I was expecting 5. Instead, 12 bikers came roaring up to my office.
How fun.
Harley screaming, and I had to bring chairs in. I've got a pretty large office.
Sorry, but that's a funny one. That's great.
And I had 12 people.
Where were the cameras?
12 highly motivated, highly energized, highly opinionated. Huh?
The show would have bought that one. Oh yeah.
You know, I've got I have some broadcast background, and I keep thinking, boy, I want to recreate that for TV. I mean,
yeah. Somebody will buy it.
So yeah, it was just an amazing thing, and it turned out really good. What was amazing was I actually have. I reinvented myself so many times. One of the other industries I was in was, believe it or not, the motorcycle industry, and I used to go to the Cincinnati V-Twin Expo every year, and I have dealt with all these, you know, all sorts of manufacturers of V-Twins, Harleys, and what have you. So it was interesting because their energy and their intensity was authentic, and I could direct it. I could manage it, and it was amazing. And I was thinking the whole time, what if somebody who's never had experience of working with people who are incredibly energetic, opinionated, and really don't give a rat's ass how you feel, you know, and you got a bunch of them. I was wondering how other people would deal. I didn't have time to think about it too long. I just sort of kept going. So, so, you know, it's interesting, Arthur, there are a number of different disciplines that people are following, and even in the conference that we were at, the AIS conference that we were at, we were talking about using different philosophies to match the situation at the time, and that they all have strengths. And in the questionnaire I sent to you, your answer to the question when I asked which disciplines do you subscribe to, and you shared the Johnson and family systemic, and when you said, and when the answer to the question why, you said they all work. And share with me, if you can, the landscape of merging the different philosophies together and why.
Okay, so the family systemic piece, what I can say in all the interventions that I've done and followed up, even some of them years later, where I'd been out of the picture for a long period of time, almost all of them always leaned back to the education, to the family systemic education piece that happened on the first day that we met. I always really spend a lot of time on that day, really digging into the dynamic and the education that's needed to really initiate an accountability and ideally keep that accountability alive throughout. And, you know, the feedback I've gotten is long after I'm out of the picture, that accountability stayed alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So invitational. I'm not inviting anybody a week before the intervention. I'm not doing it days before the intervention. It's usually the day of.
Yeah.
And one that I just did recently this weekend. Very intelligent doctor who the invitation was his brother-in-law, who he really trusted, who he had the lowest level of resentment for, and the doctor's wife, his sister, they initiated by visiting the house and extending an invitation for the rest of us to come over and have a talk. He agreed, and we came. And then sat and talked for 4 hours. It was a very long talk. And then we got on a plane and off we went.
I know about those long talks.
Yeah.
The
structure of the intervention was, just real quick, so the structure of the intervention was the Johnson model structure. Mm. I love that structure. I think it, especially with alcoholics, I mean, it's designed for that.
Right.
Some cases probably needs a lot of modification or not even use that. But in this case, that combination worked perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever dropped the idea on the family to educate the loved one about options and what could happen in the future? So instead of invitational, as in, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do, and I want you to come and talk about it with us. Mm-hmm. Not quite like that, but to ask the loved one if they would be interested to talk to somebody about their condition, if they would be interested in talking about what the future could look like. Have you opened the door to that kind of conversation prior to the day of the event?
That conversation has usually happened before I ever got there. That's why I'm there, because they're not up for that.
I am paying...
If that makes sense.
I am paying very close attention to what you're saying. By the way, I only do this podcast... I'm incredibly selfish. I only do this podcast so I can learn.
Oh, yeah.
I am not telling you...
I hope I wasn't too pointed in my response.
Oh, no. No, this is what I'm looking forward to. I am the least experienced of any of you guys, and I'm sitting here. I think I have ideas, but holy cow, the shit that's backfired on me already, Patty.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of thinking about I think that if really where the work can really start is actually at the initial conversation with the family members, because if you can get them to sort of believe in you and trust you, that how to not just deal with the person that you're talking to on the phone, but the whole entire family system, and that you have the language that you can kind of connect the dots and sort of be flexible in how you assess that situation. I mean, like, for instance, I'm working on a case right now, and there's a lot of dynamics that's going on in that case. And I spent most of my morning yesterday, working on not so much, having the family sign the contract, because I already had that done. Within like 20 minutes, I had that contract sent to me, and they were ready to go. But all of a sudden, things started to happen. And so, in that course of time, I had to talk with the dad, like, for a couple hours, which he is actually he's definitely he's the one that's going to hold the door open for sure, 100%. But I really had to learn how to attach myself with this man to help him to create his story right from the beginning. Instead of telling him what it is that he needed to do, I needed him to tell me where he started to feel that support from me. And then I had to calm down the wife. And then I had to calm down the brother to let the brother know, listen, it's okay. I've got this. This is kind of what's going on here. We've got someone here that's borderline. We've got someone here that's got a complexity in terms of sex addiction and alcoholism. And so, I mean, I think that it's really having that kind of skill and really assessing, because it's not just assessing that first caller. I mean, obviously, that's where you hopefully are going to get that contract out to the family member so you can, provide those services for the family, where you can get in and start working with the family. But sometimes in order to calm down that system, you sort of got to make yourself very flexible in the skills that you're trying to practice as you kind of start to create that foundation, off the intervention moving forward.
That's what's amazing is you mentioned the word borderline. Were you talking about somebody who has an axis 2 personality disorder?
I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. I didn't really, I just said, what I sort of come from is, I try and get some information in terms of their behaviors, in terms of the longevity of the behaviors. And in this case, I mean, I could really clearly see that we've got someone here that has never really launched in her life. And she's 39, 40 years old. And some of the behaviors that she's participating in, it's a lot more complex than just the addiction. The severity of the attachment and the trauma is clearly there for me. So when I hear that type of case, I can tell that we may have someone here that has a borderline personality, maybe not born with that, but definitely has developed that as a result of not launching in their life. So I think that, it really helps the family to just sort of take them away from addiction, alcohol, drugs. It takes them to this place of, where they can kind of feel like, okay, we've got something else going on and we've known that. I don't know. I think that I really try and assess the family, I guess, is what I when I start working on interventions. And I'm sure, Arthur, you've got a lot of good information about that as well.
Yeah, actually, I recently got put in touch with a family where last week there was a crisis. The lady hadn't eaten for days. Alcohol, lack of a detox bed, wound up back at the same treatment center that she'd been to 3 or 4 times in the last 10 to 12 years. And the family decided, they said, we don't want to decide that this is where she's going to be for treatment within the crisis. So they only paid for 2 weeks. And they got in touch with me and I said, well, why don't we, it was locally, I said, why don't we meet up and I can do a consultation with you and you can decide if you want to work with me over the course of the next 3 months to do sort of a family coaching piece and help guide your daughter to, somewhere that is actually going to help her. And we can plug her 10-year-old son into therapy and the whole, get everybody plugged into what they need to be plugged into. And I asked the father to write a timeline before I got there, and he did. And there was just a brief statement that said, and she has chronic pain. Well, over the last 10 to 12 years, they keep going for the trauma, the specialty trauma treatment center, but the chronic pain piece has never been addressed. As a human being, I'm always going to try to take, say I step on a nail. I want the pain from the nail going through my foot to be out of my way before I'm thinking about any emotional stuff. And anyhow, that is so. Actually, Diane, who was here earlier, my wife, lovely wife, met this lady at the airport, and they flew to a place that specializes in chronic pain recovery. And I'm still working with the family, and we're developing a long-term plan, and got some accountability, and So I don't know where I was going with all that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Well, you touched on a number of things. So Diane offers sober transport. That's part of your.
Only some very specific ones. Like this one it was a perfect fit. So but Diane's not like she's not out in the trenches like me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very different. Now,
Yeah.
we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back to talk about some of the things that you spoke about. So if you'll do me a favor, everybody, just hold on, and we'll be back in just a minute. The views and opinions expressed on this show are of the hosts, the guests, and callers. They do not necessarily reflect the views of Addiction Got a Minute or the organizations associated with them. Okay, we're back, and thank you all for your patience. I am here with Arthur Westinghouse out of Nashville, Tennessee. Arthur has been an interventionist for quite a few years now, and since 2012, and he's done hundreds of interventions. It's really great to have you on the program, and the fact that you're a musician doesn't hurt either, as Howie sits with the drums behind me in my studio. And it's interesting.
I know, we got to have a jam. We've got to have a jam soon, Howie.
I work with somebody in Australia, and we send pieces back and forth. It's really, in technology today, it's really, that's what it is. You just record your pieces. I do want to clarify one thing. When I talk about my experience, it's interesting because I literally have done hundreds of interventions before my training. I've been at it for about 8 years. So it's sort of like born again, if you will. After my experience with Jeff and Deborah J., really opened my eyes to the process, because I was just trying my best, and you can get pretty far trying your best, but without education and supervision and guidance and having a program, a specific, whether it be Johnson, Love First, or what have you, you run the risk of making things really hard. And there were lots of trials and tribulations, but I'm thrilled to say that I'm still doing this because I do believe that I ended up I feel a lot better now doing what I am with this kind of training and the supervision. Also, the fact that I have a clinical background is interesting, because when we talk about borderline personality disorders and clinical issues, which we'll save for another show, these are considerations because there's certain types of things you cannot change. That people were born a certain way, and as they grow older, they either learn how to manipulate the environment, the system, and we know sociopaths and psychopaths are very capable of giving a presentation of being, the school marm, or, your local ice cream man who's just really nice, and behind closed doors, it's a nightmare. But we'll talk about those things at another time. Let's talk about chronic pain for a second, because when we talk about opiate addiction, there's a number of elements involved which need to be considered. And one of them is the diametric opposite impact in pain sensitivity when you're taking an opiate over a prolonged period of time. And for those of you who are listening that aren't familiar, the nature that the opiates work in your brain, it doesn't take long at all. Matter of fact, those of you who have tried an opiate will agree, and I'm sure there'll people be bobbleheading, nodding like a bobblehead in the distance. The highest you ever got was from that first Percocet. And from then on, you're constantly trying to chase that high. What's happening is your body is adjusting. Your brain adjusts to that stimulation and does not respond as intensely to it. And on the back end, the sensitivity to pain gets more and more acute. So while you're on the opiates, you're now getting more hurt by a pain which earlier didn't hurt that much. And the longer you go, the more hypersensitive you get. One of the common denominators, and everybody accepts this, how you perceive pain is the way you perceive pain. The pain is real to you. It's almost impossible for the medical world to determine how accurate that pain is. And that leaves it all a matter of interpretation. So, Arthur, when somebody comes to you and says, I suffer with chronic pain, you basically have to accept that and understand that they're going to be drinking away their pain. They're going to be popping pills or doing lines or whatever they can get their hands on because it's real for them. Wouldn't you say that's true in your experience?
Yeah, it's definitely real for them.
And it makes it all the more difficult when you try to confront them because they make an argument which is irrefutable. They're saying, I suffer. And you're not there to say, oh, no, you don't. Quite to the opposite. You're saying, yeah, you do. But the result of taking all these opiates, the result of drinking for so long is having this impact. And now it's our job to convince them of the legitimacy of taking a medication holiday or getting medical supervision or the appropriate detox and treatment. Patty, give me an example of one of the worst cases of something like this that's happened in your experience.
Well, I mean, I've definitely done some pain management or pain prescription interventions. And I mean, it's complex because, I mean, the one thing is that, again, as you're when you are facilitating an intervention, you're not really convincing them to do anything. You're really presenting the facts. You're helping them and helping the family sort of come together, or whoever the group is, to educate them in terms of, some of the consequences, really, I guess. And also really kind of acknowledge like some of the issues that are real, that are, I always try and advocate for the untreated patient and for the untreated, person that has the addiction or alcoholism or whatever is going on for them. I have to advocate for them as well as I have to advocate for the group. So, I mean, in terms of the pain management cases that I've dealt with, I think that the one that I go to is one that I had facilitated in San Francisco, and I actually had gotten the referral from a psychiatrist. And this psychiatrist had been working with this woman for some time, and she, it was very clear that this woman, and she talked about borderline personality in the sense that she was developing a personality related to how she was dealing with her pain, and how the amount of pain medication that she was attached to was really giving her much more depression, much more, a suicide ideation thought. I mean, all these issues were coming up for this young woman. And I think that what really happened, was the psychiatrist really wanted me to go and help educate the family, to try and give the family a sense of relief that there were treatment programs that were specifically that could actually help the individual deal with their pain and learn how to deal with the pain, but also get to help organize the medications that the person was on. Because it's just, to go in there and say, look, you're going to be, I mean, I've had people that's gone to treatment programs they've gone into detox and they've brought them all the ways off the medication, very, very abstinent model based. And sometimes I'm not a big, I don't know if that's the right sort of approach sometimes when you're dealing with someone who has chronic pain, because, I think that it's a specialty, and it's really important that you have a facility that is going to deal specifically with those issues and help that person step by step, where they can kind of see that they have crossed that line, and how do they get back to, dealing with the real pain, and is there real pain anymore, and that's the therapeutic side of, trying to help people with pain. But I mean, I've had a couple of tough cases, but to be totally honest, I've had a lot of success in terms of people going through long-term treatment, that have been able to successfully get off pain medication, and abstain from that and continue with a whole spiritual practice and, a whole physical sort of exercising and things like that has helped them.
How long is long term?
Arthur, what's your thoughts?
How long is long term? I mean, it's in an individual case by case basis. I mean, I don't determine what that looks like.
Well, it's been interesting because in the discussions that I've had, people think in terms of the length of time it takes for someone to adopt a new style of sanity, a new life of living clear-headed, without dependence, with being self-reliant and learning the world is not out to kill them. And you're right, absolutely, it's different for everyone. The presentation that I'm met with more often than not is, how long do you want my husband, mother, sister, brother to go away for? And I say a minimum of 6 months. I really want to see 9. I'd prefer a year, and 18 months is really the best way to go. I just lay that out because I have no idea how complex their particular needs are. But I plant the seed in people's minds that this is not going to happen overnight, that it's quite the marathon, and they really need to adapt to it. So I think what I'm making reference to is that 28 day thing that happened years ago. It became the standard. So I guess the bottom line to all this is we all agree. The answer is it depends.
Yeah, I think that I mean, in terms of the long-term treatment, I just say, look, 2 years. I mean, if you think back, I got clean because I'm in recovery, coming up to 27 years on Friday.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yep. And when I got clean back in a long time ago, what was told to me was that it takes 2 years for drugs to come out of your system.
Yes.
And I believe that even today. I mean, whether it's marijuana, whatever it is, I mean, it's just like the detoxification doesn't just happen from the physical symptoms of withdrawal, right? It's also the mental and the emotional and the lifestyle and all that stuff. So I sort of like really try and kind of come from that perspective. And I said, look, the studies show 90 days of inpatient treatment seem to work. However, not everyone can do that. So, but I do talk about the longevity, of that it does take a long time to recover, and that there needs to be some accountability, for the family, for the patient, and whatever that is, whether it's going to meetings for, every day for the 2 years, because I did, and that was my experience. So I don't tell families about that, but I'm just saying in general,
So,
but I think that the long term, it's really kind of really trying to educate the folks that we're talking to as well.
absolutely. So what it seems we're in agreement with is that the answer is it depends, but almost as importantly is the post-discharge case management, aftercare. I mean, I continually refer to the tar pit of addiction. When you get out of the tar pit and you're able to clean your act up, what good is it when you dive back into the tar pit? I
can tell you this. Do you want to finish your thought, Howie?
No, go ahead, Arthur.
Sorry, I just jumped right in. So before I was an interventionist, my first job in the field was at Sheridan Correctional Center in Illinois. I carried a caseload of 20 clients there, the West Care program. I worked there for over 2 years.
Oh, that's why you look like the Hulk. Yeah, I see.
That went over my head. Anyway, so they had what they called the 120 days before discharge, and I was in charge of writing that plan for each one of my clients on my 20-man caseload. And one of the clients one day came into the group and said, "God bless you and you and you and you," because he knew that nobody was going home. Everybody was going to some form of next step, being halfway house, recovery home. So I was not sending, it would have been a disservice for me to send any of those guys straight back to the street. And I was committed to something better. And I'll tell you what, I was one of the few counselors there who actually lived in the city of Chicago, and I would run into these guys. I'd have them come and tap me on the shoulder in a diner. I'd see them in meetings. And I'd see the results of making a responsible decision that was a really difficult conversation. When I had to inform them that that's what was happening, they didn't like it, but I was okay with that.
Yeah. What a great story. What a great story. Yeah, no, I get it. I used to work I worked for California Department of Corrections, and I oversee 9 prisons in California.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of the guys that I was dealing with were N numbers, which is, N numbers were like folks that were addicted to drugs and were sentenced, and they did have a protocol that they needed to follow. And I mean, just to really work in that population for me was very easy and very simple, just because I mean, there was a lot of vulnerability, that you could get some of those folks to the aftercare just because it was mandated and so on and so forth. But those skills, you can't get that in school. You cannot get that. That is like, a very personable sort of, connection that you have for me as an interventionist, not to make it about me, but I think that we were talking to, Arthur was mentioning that, in the topic that he wanted to kind of talk about a little bit was, taking care of yourself as an interventionist, or taking care, finding out like how you get into this field and making sure that you're taking care of yourself before you sort of become an interventionist, because it's a kind of a cool job, to be an interventionist, because you are out there sort of, saving people, if you will, in a very positive, healthy way, and taking that burden off families' shoulders. But I just kind of wanted to hear a little bit about that, Arthur. What your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So where I was going with that is it really comes from somewhere very personal to me, in that my counselor in the treatment center in the 90-day program that I went through in 1990, Bob, they called him Batman. That was the nickname they had for him, Batman. He was like this tall, dark figure with the cowboy boots and the long hair, and back then counselors could take you to their home, and adolescents could smoke on the unit 1 an hour, right? And so I was scared to go back home to the south side of Chicago. I really stayed away. And so I did Thanksgiving dinner with Bob and his family, and, and that kind of stuff really saved my life. And the next thing I know, like, different staff members are taking turns taking me home on weekends. It was powerful. I mean, I was kind of a 17-year-old rescue mission, Mm-hmm. Anyhow, so back then, you looked in the phone book to find somebody's number. And I, about a year and a half out, I just had this real pull to find Bob. And I looked in the phone book and I found his wife's name, and I called her up and I said, "Where's Bob?" She said, "Oh, he's relapsed. He's at the Salvation Army in Joliet." I said, "Okay." So I called up over there and got a hold of him. Bought him lunch, drove over, bought him lunch at Checkers, and that's the last time I ever saw him. Mm. And what I took away from that was I really want to be careful if I ever think about working in this field, that I'm sure that I've worked through enough of what I need to work through before I take on something like that, because I don't want to end up like my good friend Bob.
Yeah.
And so I take everything to the extreme, and I waited 18 years into my recovery before I took that first job at the prison that I was speaking about, making $11 an hour. I was like, oh, okay, so I'll earn all my facility hours to get my CADC credential, and
Sure.
I'll tell you, I earned every one of those. But, so that, I did a lot of years of, just real volunteer work, and being young in recovery and having strong recovery at a young age. A lot of people would always refer parents of, kids that were struggling to talk with me so I could give them a little inside information. So, I did a lot of things, for not necessarily for free, because I got some big payment. I got to live a really good life. And then I really was clear about asking. I wasn't sure if it was okay for me to collect a paycheck as a counselor. So I asked, I sought a lot of mentorship, and everybody said, "Oh yeah, you need to be there doing that."
Yeah. Yeah. What a great story. A great story. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that it's really important to get, to get that experience, and to have like those mentors to sort of help and support, as you kind of go along in this field, especially if you're in recovery. I always think to myself, okay, I'm never exempt from using drugs, and I always think about this story, and the story goes like this. I was running across the bridge because I used to be a marathon runner, and I've got a lot of medals up there. One day I'll show them. I'll wear them all on my neck. But I used to do a lot of marathon running, and I was running across the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was a beautiful day. I think I was about 19 years clean, and it was like everything was going great in my life. I had started my intervention business. I was in private practice. I'd bought a house. All these great things were happening. And all of a sudden, as I'm running across a bridge at, 8.5-minute miles, I looked up and the sky was blue, and I was like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to use some heroin today? And that's the truth, right? I mean, you cannot get it any more clearer than that. The disease of addiction is always going to be there. So it's so important to, putting yourself first and getting that experience, to as you kind of move into this field, because the complexities of family systems a lot of times are reasons why we use drugs. I'm not blaming that solely on that, but there's going to be a lot of issues that come up. And I think it's really important as a professional to, get all those things cleared out and taken care of.
That's actually pretty critical. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we're back. We're back on this beautiful November day, the day before Thanksgiving, 2018, with my co-host Patty Pike. Are you in the Bay Area, or are you in Canada today?
No, I'm in San Francisco today.
She's in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And you say the smoke has cleared up a little bit?
Yeah, it has. It's actually raining a little bit out there today, and hopefully the winds are going to pick up, blow some of those out, some of the smoke out. So yeah, but it's been pretty tough here. It's been it's been hard to get outside, and just kind of trying to hit the gym and just staying inside as much as you can. I mean, everyone's walking around mask here, but today I think hopefully it's going to clear out today.
Well, I want to just send out our heartfelt concern and our prayers for those who are suffering with the effects of the fires. California has had its fair share of very large fires recently, and it's been a devastating nightmare. And I'm so, the country is going through some interesting changes. New media is allowing people to communicate more quickly and more directly, so it just makes the depth of the pain that people are suffering in the floods and the storms down in Florida and in Georgia and in Louisiana, the hurricanes. It's been something, and we're seeing people being, let's just say that their mettle is being tested, and we're traditionally we see a spike in activity around the holidays. It's no surprise. Everybody is very familiar with holiday celebrations and gatherings, and the flip side of those who are not connected, the isolation, makes the pain of their isolation during the holidays all the worse. So, we're coming right up on Thanksgiving, and for those of you who are listening who are struggling, this is the time to reach out to either the local crisis intervention team, any counselors that you're familiar with, or just simply to go to meetings. Any self-help meetings will do. You don't have to subscribe to anyone in particular. All of them are good. And the reason why there are so many of them, so many places, are that they work to an extremely large degree. So don't let the what people say deter you, because you will find the support. And then you may find somebody like one of us, whether it be Arthur or Patty or me or other folks in the industry. Please give them a call. So the holidays are on top of us. Are you guys going to do anything special? Arthur, are you going anywhere?
I don't have any plans yet. I think this happens every year. It's like the last minute. Just go to the store. We'll buy some dinner. Or we'll hop in the car and go see somebody. 10 minutes. Okay.
You're a Burger King for Thanksgiving guy?
No, Burger King never for anything. Ever. Yeah, I don't like old grease. Oh, sorry. Should I not talk bad about Burger King?
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to diss anybody you want. This is our podcast. We can curse.
Well, I'm pescatarian. I don't eat meat, so it'd be like tofurkey. Yeah, tofurkey.
Right.
Maybe some Brussels sprouts.
Okay. Well, we just lost a whole bunch of listeners there. Thank you very much. No, of course not. And Patty, what are you doing? You going anywhere? Doing anything?
I'm just going to be going to Oakland at my husband's sister lives in Oakland, just across the bay. So we're going to be heading over there for the day and just kind of hanging out with his family. Just kind of doing the turkey thing. I'm a Canadian, so even though I'm an American too, but I'm still kind of adjusting to this big holiday that you have here, because the Canadians, we really celebrate Christmas more so than Thanksgiving, even though we do have Thanksgiving, obviously. But yeah, I think it's going to be a nice day and, just kind of hanging out and probably hit a meeting. I'll probably go to an NA meeting. I always do that. I think that there's a lot of, marathon meetings on, on Thanksgiving and holidays. So, that's pretty much set up in my area. Really try to kind of embrace, my own personal kind of recovery at these times in the holidays. And, that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing.
I'm really glad you brought up the marathon meetings. There are in different areas. You have meetings which are you can walk in. It's pretty much an all-day thing. People come and go throughout the afternoon. It's interesting. These times, people joke about the full moons, but the reality is these times do draw people's pain out into the open. So it's just one of those things we've grown accustomed to. Patty, who do we have on deck? Who are you thinking of inviting to our round table next week? Do we have any future guests lined up?
I think I'd like to, maybe we can invite Tim. Tim, I haven't talked to Tim. I did email with him about something else, but maybe Tim. Is it Gershoff? Is it Tim?
You've got to say bye-bye. You can't hear me?
My headset is going to clip out in a couple minutes.
Well, that's good because we only have 6 minutes left to our allotted time.
Okay.
Let's make sure we get some information from Arthur. But I'm thinking, is it Tim Gershoff? Is that how you say his name? Grealish. Okay, thank you.
Tim Grealish, the funny guy. Yeah. He's always got funny posts on Facebook.
But get him on. We got to get him back on too. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I'm just curious about just to hear a little bit about what you do in Nashville in terms of your intervention business, Arthur.
Sure. So Diane and I, my wife Diane and I are partners. We have Westinghouse Intervention and Family Coaching. That's our practice that's based in Nashville. We service the entire U.S. Really a family-focused intervention service that we provide. We do family coaching, that can go on as long as the family wants. We're also, so between Diane and I, we have over 50 years of recovery between the two of us. We're only in our mid-40s, which is...
Oh, that's awesome.
Diane's in recovery 22 years from an eating disorder. I've just had 28 years. And we're both singer-songwriters, so we play music around town, and we have some ideas around incorporating our music, our recovery, and just our whole skill set that we bring into something kind of special. I'm not saying exactly what that is yet because we're still drawing up some business plans, but I think it's going to be something unique and special. And, really the idea is to integrate everything that we have to offer, as opposed to everything's like we do this and then we do that. And that
well, that's wonderful. How can people reach you? What's your website?
Website is westinghouseintervention.com.
Westinghousintervention.com. And a phone number that people can reach you at? If you want. If not, you can just...
hang on. Let me give you the... where is it? There it is. It is. I have to look up my own phone number. It is 833-358-2199.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. And Arthur, I know your headset's about to give out. Your audio is slipping away. Please give Diane a big hug from all of us to all of you. And I will be playing her song at the wrap-up of the show. So on behalf of all of us to all of you, Arthur, thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Oh, any shout-outs? You want to say hello to anybody in particular? You want to thank anybody?
I just drew a total blank. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Howie and Patty, and really just what a gift to be able to connect with you guys today and see your lovely faces on Skype here. And, look forward to seeing and connecting with you again.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to get to know you at the conference. And the man sports a pork pie like nobody's business. I mean, he's got good hats. The man's got a good hat.
Yeah. Hey, I got some really cool hats, by the way.
Oh, it'll be mandatory that you wear them, Patty.
We have to wear next time. We have to wear them.
Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got a nice one from New Orleans I just got. Anyway, it's so awesome to get to know you, Arthur. And, I'm looking forward to connecting more. And I think that it's so important, as interventionists and as folks that are really out there trying to help families, to stay connected and, and to help each other as well. So anyway, I really appreciate you coming on today and getting to know you a little more.
Awesome. Same here. Good to connect with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
All right.
Well, Patty, any shout-outs, Patty?
My shout-out today is to... I'm going to shout out to Narcotics Anonymous and recovery. And the reason why is that I was able to kind of focus on recovery and not addiction on a problem-solving issue that I've been dealing with for a couple of years. And I finally kind of got through that, and I'm really grateful because without DNA in my life, which is a big part of my life, and 12 steps, I would not be in this place of, being open and doing what I do right now. So I'm really grateful for that.
Well, I'm sure everybody can appreciate that as well. I'm giving my shout-outs are to a fellow named Justin Oslin. Justin is important in my life because he proposed to my daughter last week. which is
Wonderful.
wonderful. And we're thrilled. They've only been together for 9 years. And the running joke is they've been dating since they were the same height. He's now sports like 2 feet taller than her, which is wonderful. But and of course to my lovely, adoring, and wonderful wife Jennifer. So thank you very much, Arthur. I really appreciate it, and to give Diane a big hello on our behalf. Patty, thank you again. Truly appreciate that. We'll be in touch for next week. So I have I have something here to add to the show. I'm going to say goodbye to my co-host Patty and to my friend Arthur, and they won't be able to hear this.
Patty.
But
Bye, Arthur.
Take care.
We'll be
on the
in
flip.
touch soon.
When the sound of your voice gets lost in all of the noise, just remember you're not on your own. I'm home for you. When you're feeling sad and down, and no one to share your doubts with, and know you taste all your tears, I'm here. I'm here for you. Please don't you worry, my dear. I will be patiently there by your side. And when the clouds disappear, there will be light. Oh, there will be
Diane Buckley, Westinghouse.
I've got a saying that describes my efforts. The best I can do is the best I can do, and I will. This brings us to the end of another episode of Addiction. Got a minute? I wish you warm breezes and clear sailing. Till next time, I'm Howie Marlin.